UFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support nufc Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today. Good evening, welcome to nufc Matters. Happy New Year from me and from George as we do
indeed.
A very special episode of nufc Matters. Ask George. As you know, we'll have it as a regular segment when we do Geordie's here, Geordie's there on a Wednesday night. But George said, how about doing this over Christmas? Let's have a one-off show where we allow you to ask George whatever you want to ask him. And so it's over to you guys who are sitting watching in the chat. Get your questions in. We've got an hour. We thought we'd take it up until 6:30, which is when, of course, the live coverage starts on Sky tonight for Newcastle's trip to Anfield. First game of 2024, and we'll maybe have a 5-minute spell where we're going to look ahead to that in due course. But James Wilkinson, good evening, James. And I notice you and your partner managed to get this question out there on Facebook as well as on here. Can you ask George if he remembers a referee in the late 60s losing his wigs in the first half and then having to come out in the second half with no wig on?
Yes, I do, and I'm already struggling to remember the name, but I do remember the incident. I was actually at the match. Come on. The name will come spitting out.
Was it a Newcastle game?
Yes.
Okay. Well,
yes.
What actually happened? I'll try and find the name of the referee. But what actually happened then?
Well, he got involved in a bump more than anything, but it knocked him sideways. And as he went sideways, he sat on the ground and the wind caught his wig or what, but it just disappeared. He tried half to get it back on, but when he come out in the second half, he'd given up, so he didn't have any on at all. And I can't remember the name, but I do remember the incident. Yeah.
Wow. Well, there we go. I haven't got a name, unfortunately. So anybody out there who happens to know the name of the referee, then please let us know. But get your questions in. New Year's Day, of course, quite a quiet day for most of you who will be recovering. So what did you do, George? Did you have a good Christmas? Obviously, I had Neil over. Was it a good time for you?
Brilliant to have Neil, and of course, my granddaughter India came and stayed a little bit as well, which is a great joy to me. I mean, Marge and I got to nearly 70 before I had a grandchild. So India was very special, would given up hope. The only trouble is, a few months after she was born, my son got a job in Dubai and took her to Dubai. But it meant that for the first 10 years of his life there, we used to go to Dubai 6 or 7 times a year. So we became regular flyers with Emirates. Every penny we could get was saved for an air ticket. But yeah, Christmas was lovely. And to do Christmas, cook the Christmas lunch for me and Neil, and we just had it together. It was lovely. It was unusual because it's a long time since we've spent quite so long together, just us, which was great, you know, and he seemed to enjoy it as well. So yeah, it was lovely. I mean, if it helps anybody out there that's watching and wants to know a bit about the George that's more than football, 30 years as a local magistrate, 15 years working with the Home Office in London as a volunteer, 40 years as a school governor, 30 of them as chairman of a very big school, 60 years as a naval architect, as I see the one-eyed naval architect is me title, with Newcastle University, and eventually getting an honorary fellowship. I'm still a visiting fellow, which means that they ring us up and ask us to go and do work, but I don't get paid. It's as simple as that. It's a lovely title, but that's what it means. What else? My work with the Home Office was interesting. Most people will have heard the Prime Minister, you know, that's talking about the Cobra Committee. Well, when Blair was Prime Minister, I was on his Cobra Committee, believe it or not. And what the most interesting thing about that was, I was always expecting the local press to come on the phone any second to ask about anything, and they never did. The only time they came on the phone to talk to us about it was the day I stood down, the day they paid us off. So I was expecting all of that. So, and in terms of work, well, I've worked all over the world as a consultant naval architect for big companies, for navies. Had a little bit to do with the Falklands War, which nobody in Newcastle even knew about, and probably still don't. So anything goes, even politics, if you like. I mean, I'm up for anything. I'm up for anything.
Spenny says, ask George who is his favourite panellist other than Mitch.
Well, it's got to be my mate Steve here, Steve. It can't be Mitch.
And then there you go, Steve Hasty. He says, and who's the better kisser, me or Stu?
Oh, definitely you.
There you are, Spenny. You've won one. Mag Debate says, what was George's favourite away ground to play at and why?
Oh, well, as I didn't get to the heights of the first team or even the second team, but even as juniors, we used to get the chance to play on some big pitches. And the one that I remember best was Ellen Road. I liked Ellen Road. Was a great experience going to Ellen Road to play against Leeds in a FA Youth Cup match, I think it was. Or was it Northern Intermediate League Cup match? Anyway, it was a cup match, and they let us play on Ellen Road. And the highlight of the whole thing, well, Ted Hughes, that used to run the ends, if there was any famous people in the crowd, he used to always try and get one of them to come into the dressing room and talk to the lads, either before, after the match, or at half time. And at that one at Leeds, the door opened at half time, and Ted Hughes said, there's somebody coming to talk to you, lads. And in walked this enormous guy in a beautiful cream suit. And it was John Charles. And he spoke to every boy in that room he spoke to. What a wonderful man. What a gentleman. And that's something I do remember. And that was at Ellen Road.
And Ellen Road probably hasn't changed much since then, George.
No, not at all. No, hardly at all. No.
Questions are starting to come in. Alan Little, memories of Albert Stubbins, George. He says, I was his postman when he lived in Wide Open. A lovely man. And of course, he's on the cover of Sgt. Pepper's album by the Beatles. So what's your own memories of Albert Stubbins?
Well, I'm in a privileged position with Albert Stubbins because he was in the same class at the Carville School in Wallsend as my father-in-law, Jimmy the Joiner Rennie. And if Albert was in Wallsend, anywhere near Wallsend, him and his wife used to come and see Jimmy the Joiner. They'd visit. And so I got to meet him quite regularly. And he was a lovely man, a great man. There's no doubt about that, a gentleman. In my opinion, underrated as a player. He should have played for England a lot more times. He would have been a great star for Newcastle. He just was at Newcastle at the wrong time. There was too many of them. You imagine that we were struggling. We weren't struggling for centre forwards. We had Albert Stubbins, we had Roy Bentley, Charlie Wayman, and sitting in the wings was a young man called Jackie Milburn. Wow. So all those were centre forwards who couldn't get a bloody game, and that's when we had the singing manager George Martin. You see, and Seymour used to buy players. If there was a profit at the end of the year when Seymour was in charge, he used to buy a player always. And at one stage we had about 40 professionals on the books, and it was just mayhem. They just couldn't all get a game, and that was the period that Albert was there. And Albert got so frustrated, and an offer came in from Liverpool, and off he went. But I think Albert was an underrated player nationally. Scored a lot more goals than people imagine. Certainly did for Newcastle as well. And but yes, and as I say, to actually meet him personally after he'd retired, because it's an indication of what sort of guy he was. There's not many people who would come to their hometown and go and visit the lad that sat next to in the infant school at the Carville. Do you know what I mean? That's not something everybody would do. But Albert did. He always made sure he came down and seen. And my father-in-law was known locally as Jimmy the Joiner, and Albert and his wife were great, lovely people. So that I'm, happy to answer that one with some personal knowledge.
Fantastic. Okay. George says, Les, you've led an interesting life. What were your ambitions as a youngster? Going back to 16, I guess. So how old do you start having ambitions? 16 is probably a good suggestion, Les. So what were your ambitions as a youngster, George?
Well, the ambitions were to play for Newcastle United. I'm sorry to be as boring as that, but look, the future for somebody like me was apprenticeship in the shipyard, and there's nothing wrong with that. But once I started to play football, and people used to start telling me that I was reasonably good, I was, I could make a career out of it. Then that's what I wanted to do. Although academically, I was quite bright, so it was about making sure I was in the right place at the right time to get involved with Newcastle United. And when the opportunity came, of course, I jumped at the chance. It just so happens that towards the end of me time in Stevenson Memorial Secondary School, that we got a teacher called Alec Tate, who happened to be Newcastle centre forward, and he was my gym teacher and my English and maths teacher. So I saw a lot of him, but he was a huge encouragement to me, and another nice man, as it happens, too nice in some ways. And but I was determined to be to play, if I possibly could, to play professionally. And from about 13 onwards, I trained 365 days a year and looked at opportunities to do other things, other training with other sportsmen, with professional runners, and just to make sure I was fit. And even as I got into teenage, avoided things like smoking and drinking like the plague. I've never held a cigarette in my hand. I've never drunk a pint of beer. And that was all about just making sure I made myself every opportunity to do what I wanted to do. As it happens, as I got towards the end of my time in secondary school, an opportunity came along from the university and into the school, where they were offering an apprentice technician's job in the Department of Naval Architecture. And the headmaster, Edwin Strong, E.L. Strong, huge guy, lovely guy, thought that it was an opportunity I should take. Now, my father-in-law wasn't very keen, because he wanted us to do a proper apprenticeship, in what he called a proper apprenticeship in the shipyard. But Mr. Strong persuaded him that this was a good opportunity. And as it turns out, it turned out to be, because I've had a fantastic professional career. And in the university as a member of staff for over 60 years, eventually teaching and doing research, and worked all over the world as a consultant, always for the university though. So yes, I mean, my ambitions obviously changed remarkably once I got injured. Once the football was gone, the determination then was to make an academic career, and I think reasonably successfly. You know, well, the fact that I've been made an honorary fellow by the university should tell people some things. And also there's a thing called academia where people record your work and really record how many people have used your work, your written work, any papers you've written, that's any research you've done. And to get, you know, recommendations up to about 20,000 is regarded as a brilliant thing. Well, I'm up to 30,000 at the moment. So that, you know, they're all things that I've really enjoyed doing. So there you are, long answer to a short question.
Alan says you've led an interesting career. Certainly has. Sparky says Happy New Year to everybody. Happy New Year to Sparky.
Thank you, Sparky.
St James's Park Dave says, who's the worst player George can remember playing for Newcastle United?
Oh, goodness gracious. There's a few. Oh, I hate to say it because I don't think he was but whether he got a chance or not, I don't know. I've got to say, Marcelino, the Spanish lad at centre half, was he didn't play that many times. When he did, you wondered where he'd ever played football before. Yet in Spain, he was highly regarded. So he comes close to being one of the worst. And then there was the clown who came via a videotape. Cisco, did they call him?
Oh, yes.
I mean, you know, it just begged belief that somebody at Newcastle United, on the basis of a videotape, would buy somebody like that and thrust them, try hard to thrust them into the first team, when it was clear the lad just wasn't up to it. It was cruel, really. So Cisco's not far away as well.
Okay. Alan says, George, did you work at Wallsend Slipway? My dad says he remembers you. Dad has the same name as me, Alan Little. Dad went to school with Neil McDonald's dad, who said he was called Shaq and was a great player also. So, well,
there's a lot in there. Neil McDonald's dad and I, Jimmy, played together for a little bit when we played for Wallsend Corinthians, when Jimmy was on his way down and I was on my way up. I didn't actually work in the slipway per se, but I used to go into the slipway as part of my work with the university to collect data from things we were doing with the slipway. And so it's very likely that I bumped into his dad when I was down in the workshops collecting the data. So that, yeah, all of that fits together for me. But Neil McDonald's dad was a brilliant player. Jimmy was very clever, but he was a bit slight, if I could say, easily pushed off the ball, sadly. But a very, very clever player. So it was no surprise to me when I saw his son coming through the ranks to go up to a professional level and into Newcastle. No surprise to me either that Neil MacDonald, compared to his dad's, built like the proverbial brick Watson, because I suspect there was a lot of hard work gone into that by Jimmy, persuading Neil to do exercises and physical stuff to bulk up, because he remembered suffering himself when he played. But a very, very talented and clever player. There's no doubt about it. My own father worked at Wallsend Slipway as well, as it happens. So yeah, good connections with all of the yards. But I do remember those days. I'm trying to think what we were doing. And we were. They were turning big turbine shafts, I think, in the slipway, or crank shafts for engines, and we were doing some stress measurements on one of them as they were turning it, and I was just going to collect the data. But I spent quite a bit of time in there. Yeah, that's a good memory, that one. Yeah,
good stuff. Okay, the next question, Sam. Does George remember Mackham contractors work in the Tyne shipyards, but Geordies were barred from the weir?
Yes, I do. Yeah, that is a fact that there was quite a lot of Mackems worked on the river, but to find any Geordies on the weir was a hard thing to do, and that lasted a long time afterwards. I remember we did in the university, we did a lot of consultancy with the big one of the big weir shipyards, Thompson's, I think it was, when they were building a ship called the SD-14s. God, the trouble we got going to collect data off those ships when they realised where we were from Newcastle University. In fact, the one day we were going out on a ship on trial, and when we got to the yard, the ship had gone. It had left. Somebody had told the crew, the captain and the pilot that we were late, we weren't going to get there, and it left. And it turned out to be not true. Of course, we were there. The only trouble is they stopped the ship outside the piers at the weir, and we had to go out in the pilot boat and climb aboard the ship outside the piers. Now, in those days, electronic equipment that we were using was driven by 12-volt batteries, car batteries, the really big ones. And I remember being told by my professor, and he thrust his battery into my hand. And of course, there was a rope ladder there going up and down like that. There was a board going up and down like that. And I've got this 12-volt battery in my hands, and I'm trying to get hold of the ladder. And I had visions of us coming back downwards into the water. But we got the job done. But somebody did actually send the ship away. It's quite deliberately. So yeah, I do believe that that's a fact. But there were lots of contractors and employed people in the yards on the Tyne who were Mackems. Yeah.
Okay, Alan McKenzie says, could you smell the Gallagher bugs pitch side, George, back in the day?
Yeah, especially when it got towards summer. Yes. When the temperatures start to rise, you could smell it. Yeah, you could. Yeah. I mean, anybody that remembers them at all, they were just open cesspits, really. And you add to that the fact that some of the lads at the back didn't even bother going down to the toilet; they peed in your pocket. So you had a mixture of what was on the ground and what was coming up from the toilet. So yeah, once the weather started to get warm towards the end of the season, you could pick up the whiff all right. Yes.
Good old days, George. Good old days.
Absolutely, remember them well.
Doug, good evening, says, what was the best and worst advice you ever received, George?
Are we talking football or everything?
I guess everything. I guess a bit of everything, yeah.
Well, a bit of everything. Football-wise, let's start with the football. The best advice I got was from the man I've already talked about, Alec Tate. And Alec Tate, very early on when we worked together, and people that listen to the platform will know what I'm going to say now. He insisted, or tried anyway, that if I was going to do anything, one of the best things I could do was to demonstrate I could use both feet, left foot, right foot, and try and be so good that people couldn't even guess which was your natural foot. So he then showed me a number of exercises, and he showed me father, and to set up, which would help me to make me left foot as good as my right foot. And I, for hours and hours in my back garden, must have drove the bloody neighbours mad hearing me kick a football against our washhouse wall, because what a brick washhouse. And I was always hammering the ball against the brick washhouse. And one of the exercises was an easy one. And in fact, anybody that remembers the old gym in the car park, and it's St. James's would remember, because white circles painted on the wall, from tiny size, just bigger than a saucer, to bin lid size, all over the wall. And then you kick the ball back and forwards against the wall. And somebody that's there coaching you, it used to be my father, would shout, right foot, top. So that was your right foot to the circle at the top, left foot to the bottom of the top. And you couldn't change. You had to hit it as it came. and I used to do that for hours, and it worked because it got to the stage where by the time I did go to St James's Park, there were one or two people who started to wonder. But the older coaches, like great fullbacks, Benny Craig, Joe Richardson, who should have played for England if it hadn't been for the war, they were coaching the younger ones then. They knew I was right-footed. They could tell I was right-footed. But and another famous player knew I was right-footed as well. A young man by the name of Jackie Milburn, who I had the pleasure of playing for when he was managing the A team. And I remember Benny Craig taking me down to North Road and Wallsend, where they used to play in those days, and saying to me, "Oh, the 18 short of a left back. I'm going to take you down and you can play for them, George." So down I went, and I had no idea. I'd forgotten who was managing the A team then. And I walked into the dressing room and Benny said, "Yeah, Jackie, here's your left back," and who should turn round but none other than my hero. Well, I could hardly breathe for 20 bloody minutes, never mind play football. There he was standing in front of us. But yeah, a great experience. But another one that in the dressing room a few minutes, and he threw us a ball, football, and while I was in the dressing room, and I controlled it and put it down, and he said, "Left back, you're a right footer." He knew instantly. And I thought, well, that's why they're professionals, So that was good football advice. Good advice in life was to study again from Edwin Strong. I left secondary modern school with no qualifications at all. And his advice was, whatever you do, go to night school. Even if you play professionally, make sure you've got another job if it goes wrong. And my goodness, what good advice that turned out to be, because once my knee went, that was the end of any football. So I had to have something else to do. And fortunately, by then I had this apprenticeship in the university as an apprentice technician. The deal was that because I had no qualifications, the university took us on a year's probation. But in that year, I had to get an O level in English and maths. And that wasn't easy, I'll tell you. But I got them because I got the job and stayed on, and then went on to qualify professionally as a chartered engineer and all of that, and came back as a member of the academic staff. Which I really enjoyed. And as I say, worked as a consultant all over the world subsequently. So they're two best bits of good advice, both one in football, one in life. Worst bit of advice in football was, Ted Hughes used to run the ends, the juniors, and he used to be held by a lad called Joe McCartney. Joe was canny, but prone to excesses. And his advice before I went out for a particular match was that the guy I was opposing was slow. Was I'd have no trouble handling this guy. It turned out he was like a bloody jet flyer. He was 100 miles an hour. It took us 10 minutes to wonder what the hell was going on. So that was a piece of poor advice I remember quite vividly. Poor advice in life. Oh dear, that's a harder one. No. Danger, if you do that, you get into things like regrets, and I don't have any regrets at all, not whatsoever. So I'll leave that one. Yeah, I'm all happy. Right. Yeah.
Okay, halfway through the show, I get your questions in. We've got another half an hour of this before we move on, and get your questions in by George. Some great answers, some great questions. Get them in, and here are the first set of ads for 2024. A big thanks to all our sponsors. Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website, skipsandbins.com. Easy contract, free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks again to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. If you'd like to order some, then give them a call on 01768 210 102. Go to the website, mrvickies.co.uk, or drop them an email, info@mrvickies.co.uk. A big thanks to United Group Travel. They're a family firm based in Morpeth with pickups throughout the northeast. No strangers on our tours, just people you haven't met yet. They've got a presence on Facebook and a website, unitedgrouptravel.com. If you want to make a booking, give them a call on 01670 632 460 or mobiles 0791 666 4174 0795 71 41654. Thanks to Darren Baldwin Funerals, independent funeral directors. Let us look after you in your time of need. They're based on Old Durham Road in Gateshead, and you can contact them at their website, darrenbaldwinfunerals.co.uk. Email darren@darrenbaldwinfunerals.co.uk or give them a call, 0191 478 2730. A big thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. And a big thanks to New Workwear. You can find them at newworkwear.com. If you want to help the channel, hit the thumb up to subscribe, hit the subscribe button, and share to your other social media. You can also pay a one-off fee of £25 to get a scarf, a cup, a pen, and a membership card. Go to the website, nufcmatters.com, and click membership, or put your smartphone over this QR code. We also support the food bank on this channel. If you want to make some donations virtually, go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and make a donation today. We're also a podcast on Spotify, iTunes, and other podcast providers. Just search NUFC Matters. I'm also a part of the Northeast Footy Brekkie Show. You can listen to that Monday to Friday, 7 till 9 at the tooneuk.com. We've also got an event coming up next year. It's in January the 19th at the Tyneside Irish Centre. It's an evening with Nobby Solano. Tickets are available on voucher for £20. Don't forget, Supermac and Gibbo do every pre-match at Louis Liquor Store. It's free entry, children welcome, and there is great food by Fed's Fried Chicken. They're usually on pre-match and sometimes post-match at Louis Liquor Store. Okay, welcome back. Steve Bennett says, ask George what I should do to protect my liver because I'm off to meet Neil and Stu to watch the match.
Lots of milk.
Alan says, any memories of another Wallsend lad, George? Ray Hankin. He's my uncle-in-law, ex-Burnley, Leeds and Borough.
Yes. From the boys' club mostly. Obviously, he's a lot younger than I am, but I do remember him and people saying to me about this lad, Hankin, coming through, this big centre forward. And I think the only thing that mystified them was why he didn't go to Newcastle, why Newcastle weren't interested, because he was knocking the goals in, no doubt about that. Tell you who was interested, who tried to persuade Newcastle. The lad that discovered Peter Beardsley, Brian Watson, little Watty, who was partly Peter Beardsley's mentor, and Peter Thornton, who was the youth coach, the youth development officer at Newcastle for a little while. Peter Kirkley.
Oh, Peter Kirkley, yeah.
Yeah. Well, him and Watty used to scout together. And they, I think, tried to persuade Newcastle to take Ray Hankin, but they didn't bite. And that's how we ended up going via. Interesting, he went the Burnley route, and before I went in Newcastle, you see, I had a fortnight on trial at Burnley. It's a story worth telling. I had no interest in going anywhere other than Newcastle United, and my father also. But Burnley had a scout then in the northeast who took all the lads down to Turf Moor. Ralph Coates, Billy Pointer, Talbot, the centre half, all of them went through Charlie Ferguson, lovely little Scotsman, and he pursued me quite a bit, and he turned up at the house one day to come and have a chat with me and my dad, and halfway through the conversation, I was sent to get a packet of fags across the local shops, and I realised somebody was getting us out of the way. And when I came back, there was a full bottle of Lamb's Navy rum on the table in front of them. Well, it was half a bottle by then. And Charlie Ferguson obviously worked out that my dad's favourite tipple was Lamb's Navy rum. And the next thing I knew was that they were making arrangements, because we didn't have a telly then, they were making arrangements for a telly to be delivered from Mountford shop in Howden the next day to our house. And then by the time the bottle room was empty, I was going to Burnley for a fortnight's trial.
Brilliant stuff. Brilliant stuff. Sparky, he says, what's been the best Newcastle game that you've ever seen?
Recently I would have had to say the Barcelona game. I seen PSG, but it was on the television because I wasn't well. I wasn't able to go. But the game I was at that was really exciting was the Barcelona game. It just took some beating. Yes, there were lots of other good games played in the time that I've watched, but the Barcelona one, for atmosphere, for skill, excitement, it had everything. We raced away to a 3-0 lead, and then two of the best footballers in Europe managed to pull Barcelona back to 3-2, and we were hanging on by our fingernails then, but we held on. But the excitement of it all was just incredible. And in terms of league games, I think one of the best league games I've ever seen was the one against West Bromwich Albion, 7-3, where the dangerous forwards, Ronnie Allen, the centre forward, and big Derek Kevin, the big attacking midfielder, made life extremely difficult for Newcastle. But it was end to end. Every time the teams went up, whichever team went up, it looked like they were going to score a goal. It was just absolutely brilliant football. So there's been a variety of games I could mention. Some of the cup ties where we came back, where Bobby Mitchell won them on his own, take a lot of beating. But it's got to be Barcelona. That game stands out as for lots of things, not just for Tino's hat trick, but the way some of the local lads came on in that game as well, and showed that they weren't scared. Showed that they were as good as what Europe had, and had belief in themselves. And I thought that was wonderful. And I watched the match with an ex-player, Charlie Woods. I don't know if anybody remembers Charlie Woods. But Charlie Woods gave me the ticket. I couldn't get a ticket initially, and I bumped into him in town. And he said, "Are you going to?" I said, "Well, no, I haven't got a ticket." He says, "Well, Howie, I've got a spare," because he had players' tickets still at that time. And so I watched it with Charlie from the paddock. But yeah, Barcelona and Newcastle was probably the most exciting game that I can remember until the other week. PSG on the telly was unbelievable,
amazing.
But as I say, I qualify that by saying the match I was actually at was Barcelona, so it's still Barcelona.
Mag Debate says, "Does George know why the pitches were so bad back in the day?" It's a good one.
Well, it's easy. There wasn't the signs that went into the pitches those days that they've got now, and you were literally playing on mud heaps. I mean, St James's Park after Christmas was just a diamond of horrible brown or grey sand. It was awful, and having played on it, and it's a bit off-putting when you go out onto the pitch and you haven't kicked the ball and you're up your ankles in bloody mud. It's to say it's off-putting, putting it mildly, but that's the way they were, and they were overused. Of course, there was no thoughts about how many times you could use a pitch like they do now, and of course it was old-fashioned grass. The pitch at St James's now, I think, is only about 75% grass. The other 25% is plastic. and that's how they can. I mean, think of the Magic weekend, the Rugby League weekend, when they play 9 games in 2 days, okay, with great hulking 16-stone players running 100 miles an hour in a pitch before it was changed and before it had all the science in it. It wouldn't have lasted 1 game. It would have just been like a ploughed field. It would have been awful. So yeah, I understand why it is, but it's it can't just blame groundsmen. But it's largely because the football and sport generally have put more science into it and understand more about how the grass grows and all this sort of thing and what to do it. And that's why now you have those lovely yellow sunlights on the pitch at night when we're not playing, because they're growing the grass back where there's patches. And those lights were invented in Holland, where they use those lights to grow tulips, to grow bulbs. So all of that science goes into it now, where back in the day, oh gosh, it was just potluck, and there really were mud pitches, nothing better. And St James's was as bad as any, I've got to say.
Okay, you're a gentleman and a scholar, says Alan.
Thank you.
George, good evening, says Happy New Year to you all. Which World Cup winning team is the best you've seen? Brilliant.
That's a good question.
Difficult one, that.
It is, because there's so many. Oh, I have to say that for my favourite is the one in Sweden where Pele made his entry into the World Cup.
I had a feeling you were going to say that,
Yeah,
I think Pele is a hard one to beat as top player, really.
Yeah, and to think there were all these. I mean, we're waxing lyrical about Lewis Miley. Well, Pele, I don't think, was quite as old as Lewis Miley was when he came in and he turned the world upside down. He was making fools of all these great professionals in many ways. But yeah, that particular team, which and it was about a time when I was desperately keen watching football as well as playing. So yeah, that one sticks out, but largely because of the entry into the world of football of the young Pele.
Mm-hmm. Okay, does George know why St James's Park has got a slope on it?
Yeah, well, just historical. It was there when they took it over from the Freemen, and they've never done anything about it. It's quite a steep slope. Some did hope when they developed the ground that's one of the things that they would do, but actually they took thousands of tons of coal out of the ground, but they didn't level the pitch when they put the ground back. They just put it back the way it was. So it's historical. That's how it was when they took it over, and they just left it the same when they took the ground over from the Freemen.
Okay, Tim, good evening. I've asked before that you worked alongside my father-in-law, Harry Parker, but were you in the drawing office when Robson Green worked there? He says.
I was in the drawing office, but I don't remember working with Robson Green. We used to do lots of consultancy work for all the yards, and particularly for Swans, and that meant that I ended up working in the drawing office quite a lot, analysing data or doing drawings and that sort of thing. But I can't say hand on heart that I remember Robson Green being there.
Okay. Tim says, I've got to say your memory's impeccable and your participation on this platform is tremendous, and it's working well for you, George.
Well, that's very kind. And if I just, on a personal note there, thank Steve and all the lads on the platform, because some of you out there won't know the sort of year I've had, starting with losing my little dog just before Christmas, losing my eyesight just after Christmas, losing my wife in January, and all that goes with that. So it's been quite the year, and I'm glad to say that Steve and the lads have kept us busy, and I'm not sorry about that, because they've kept us busy doing something which is another part of my life I love, and that's talking about Newcastle United.
Yeah, and it's great to have you on, George. We love having you on, mate. It's fantastic. George says, what does George think a big Jack Charlton would do if any of his defenders tried to play out from the back?
Well, he would go bloody mad. He did. He used to go mad when Peter Beardsley and Chris Waddle and Paul Gascoigne tried to play football at the front. All he wanted was a long ball into the middle. That's all he wanted. And I remember talking to Peter Beardsley saying that he once got a leg up of Jack because he dribbled his way into the penalty area and nearly scored. And Charlton was playing hell with him, saying, "You should have crossed. You should have crossed." No, Jack was the original long ball, high ball man. That's all he wanted. And he would tear his hair out current way that people played out. I was always surprised at how he was reasonably tolerant about the way the Irish played when he was their manager, but still hoofing it was Jack's style. And in the end was his undoing, sadly.
Okay, left B Sam says Northeast Marine pitch had a great playing surface. Did George ever play on it? And what, in his opinion, were the best local pitches?
Well, Northeast Marine was great company, had a great sports facility there, and yes, their pitch was one of the best in the area of the amateur pitches, and played several times, both as in friendlies for Newcastle and later on when I guested for Wallsend Corinthians, sometimes used to play on there. So yeah, that pitch. Best pitches in the local area. Well, a lot of them were attached to the mines because all the colliery welfares had fantastic pitches. The Rising Sun at Wallsend had a fantastic set of pitches. Linton up at near Ashington had a pitch that was like a bowling green, absolutely superb, and the facilities were superb. Backworth, where the golf club is now, used to be two beautiful pitches in there. I have a particular memory of one of those pitches as we were playing Ashington Juniors were playing Newcastle in a cup match, and it was a replay, and they played it at Backworth. And on the wing for Ashington was the young Charlton, Eddie, the one that didn't quite make it, but the one who was on the telly talking about his brothers. And I've got a scar behind me left ear where we sort of got into a tackle, and when he stood up, he accidentally stood on my head. So I've still got the scar behind this ear. I'm sure it was an accident. Yeah, they're outstanding. And if you go south of the river, even better. Horden, Anfield Plain, Seaham, Red Star, where they play now. They were all colliery pitches, and invariably were associated with a cricket club as well, which meant they got good maintenance. So, yeah, fantastic pitches in the area. And it's quite sad that so many of them have disappeared.
Alan says it was a delight to meet you and Neil pre-Forest match at the food bank. Mozza and myself send our best wishes.
Thank you. It was really nice.
Chicken Oriental says brown or red sauce, George?
Oh, brown.
Brown sauce. There we go. JC says not football related. As a naval architect, what were your thoughts on the whole Ocean Gate tragedy? The mating of composite materials to titanium. Always been curious if you had an opinion on it.
Yeah. The only thing I like, if there's anything I like about it, is that people in my business very rarely get the credit for trying new things and experimenting with new things. And this was people who were desperately trying to do something which would raise the profile of the business and of their business, and didn't work as well as they thought. But I don't blame them for having a try. Too many people in our business, in my view, have good ideas and don't push them forward. I've been lucky to work alongside people who've been prepared to push them forward, and that's taken me to some interesting places. Like working for the American Navy, for example, and that just because people were prepared to have a go. But there's lots of things which It's funny about our business. If mechanical engineers and civil engineers get all sorts of credit, very, very few naval architects get credit, and that's because they sit back and let it happen. I mean, some of the design stuff that have happened on this river that have changed the way ships are propelled and how propellers are designed and all the rest of it. Quite a lot of it happened here in Newcastle, in the university, and in the shipyards, and local people don't even know about it.
Okay, good stuff. Terry says, what would Jimmy Schooler say to a teammate wearing gloves on a cold day?
Gosh, he would be very harsh. Indeed. Jimmy was a very tough guy, had thighs like tree trunks, and when you got tackled by Jimmy, you knew you'd been tackled. Had a reputation of being dirty, I suppose to call it nowadays. He was hard. There was no two ways about that. And but a great man and a lovely man. My father once heard him say something about me, which my father was bursting with pride. I was playing in a match on St James's against Everton, and I think it was a Youth Cup match. And it was in December. The pitch was partially covered with snow, so when they swept the snow off, they put the ice and snow around the running track around the outside of the pitch. And I was playing against a young lad called O'Hara, who eventually went on to play for Everton's first team. And I was near the touchline, and I could hear him coming behind us. Could hear him plodging through the mud behind us. And as he got close, I turned my hip on him, and he went headlong over me and skidded along the cinder track in the ice, flat on his face in all the mud and cinders. And when he got up, he was scraped from forehead to his knees, absolutely covered in cinders and blood and muck. And when I went off at half time after that, Jimmy Schooler was standing in the tunnel, and my father was just behind him in the paddock. And as I went past, Jimmy Schooler turned to somebody that was with in the tunnel and said to him, "He's a nasty little bugger, mate." And my father thought that was lovely for Jimmy Schooler to think that I was a nasty little bugger. He thought that was wonderful. Sorry about the language, folks.
Brilliant stuff. Philip says, Happy New Year to you all. Ask George, if he could have played in Scotland, would he have chosen Rangers or Celtic, or would he have picked another team up there?
Aberdeen. My family's a mixture of Glasgow and Aberdeen, but the family that I spent a lot of time with, particularly summer holidays, was in Aberdeen, and I would have loved to have played for Aberdeen. I did play for a Highland League team once, and when I was up there in the summer, thanks to my uncle, who was the manager of the local paper mill, and he persuaded Mugie Moss, they called them. I think they're still around. I think it was second division of the Highland League. They were short, and my uncle said, "Oh, our George will come and put the boots on for you," and I did. Played for Mugie Moss, but yes, it would have been Aberdeen. The thing about going to my uncle's in the summer was it was a great place to go on holiday, but also the Scottish season started at least a month before ours then, and they used to play this peculiar league system where teams from every league was mixed into a jumble to play for what was the League Cup then. So I've seen lots of teams that I would never have seen, like Brecon City, like Arbroath, Queen's Park, Forfar, Brecon City. It was great, absolutely great, and I loved that. It was nice, but it would have been Aberdeen. My family I've still got family in Aberdeen, and I used to like going there. And my uncle was manager of the local paper mill and lived within a few miles of Balmoral, so the countryside was just idyllic. I used to like to go at Christmas when I was a kid because it was guaranteed I'd get snowed in. So a fortnight's holiday suddenly become a month.
Tim says the Rising Sun pitch was a cracker.
It was originally, yeah, he's absolutely right.
Alan says, who's the best manager for Newcastle you think we've had?
That's a good one. There's so many debates about it. If you want sheer excitement and you like your football on a knife edge, it's got to be Kevin Keegan. If you want your football old style and played like a gentleman, then it's got to be Bobby Robson. If you want your football and you win trophies and manage a club on a shoestring, it's got to be Joe Harvey. So you were being very lucky in many ways. I mean, if you added up points for how they did, if you look at Harvey's exploits in the cup and the way he managed the club to the Fairs Cup when we hadn't been because we're spending everything on the bloody ground, you know, it took some doing. But then the other side of it is what others did, and I think football played the Bobby Robson way was nice. But if you want sheer exciting football, it's got to be Kevin Keegan.
All right. Stephen Anderson says, are you a boxing fan, George? And if you are, who's your favourite boxer?
Ooh, I've got to admit I am. There's something in me that admires when two men can get together and try and outfox each other and defend themselves. Favourite boxer? It's only one for me. That's Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali. I've never seen before, and I don't think we'll see again a boxer of Ali's talent and skill. There'll be lots who pretend to be, but they always fall slightly short. But he had everything. He could box, he could dance, he could hit. You know, it was all there. No, Muhammad Ali, without a doubt.
Okay. You say you got no regrets, George. What's next for you? You seem to be a man of purpose, and I mean that as a compliment, says Les.
Yeah. What's next for me? To walk up Wembley Way and see Newcastle United win a trophy. Seriously. I mean, I've done it plenty of times, but sadly, most of the times I've done it, they haven't won. And I've had a carload of bad losers with us, sitting behind us, complaining all the bloody way home up the A1. So yeah, in terms of football, well, that's what I would like to see. I would want to see Newcastle United achieve something before I get too old to enjoy it. And in my life, well, I have a simple purpose in my life. I'm in a position after the year I've had where I've fitter now than I've been for many, many years. I'm happier now than I've been for many, many years. And long may it continue. That would be my purpose in life, to stay like that. But in football, got to see Newcastle win something. Okay.
One of your favourite topics, I believe officials are no way interested in foul throws any longer. What's your thoughts, George?
Oh, we've got another hour, Steve.
They just don't pay attention to them anymore.
That's absolutely right. Absolutely right. But the coaches annoy me as well. I think I had a rant on the platform the other night about it. Why is it, and Newcastle are no better than any others, in fact, sometimes worse. Why is a throw-in suddenly become an embarrassment? It's supposed to be an advantage. And yet, if we get a throw-in anywhere near the halfway line, either in our half or their half, they take the throw-in, and 20 seconds later, you can bet your bottom dollar the opposition's having a shot on our goal. That's supposed to be an advantage. The only person that attempted, in my knowledge, because I've never played at other clubs, was our former manager, Charlie Mitten. And everybody in the club, everybody knew there were 4 ways to take a throw in. And that was how you did it. There was a 5th way, and the 5th way was the long throw. He would tolerate that as a last resort if you couldn't do anything else. But he taught everybody in that club, this is how you take throw-ins. And all had to learn it. And it worked. It worked. Throw-ins weren't an embarrassment because we knew what we were doing. What worries me now is that most modern players don't seem to know what they're doing. And a lot of modern players haven't a clue how to take a throw-in because some of them take them with one hand. You watch at St James's how many times opposition players take a throw-in with one hand. How many times players take a throw-in and just roll the ball off the top of their head. They don't actually throw it at all. So, yeah it's just, Steve's right. It's just another thing which officialdom seems to have forgotten.
Yeah.
It's gone away, which is quite sad, really.
We're coming up to the end. George, I'm laughing at this. Alan Thompson says, if we won the FA Cup final on a foul throw, would you complain, George? No.
No, definitely not.
Last question from Phil. Favourite singer or group that you loved hearing or you wish you could have seen live if still alive?
Oh, that's a good one. I would like to have seen the Carpenters. I used to like their music, and in fact, I was only once ever persuaded to do a karaoke when I was out somewhere with my colleagues from the university, and I picked up the Carpenter song, "Why Do Birds Suddenly Appear" and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I would love to have seen the Carpenters.
Brilliant stuff, George. Great hour. Thanks to everybody in the chat for sending in those questions. Some great questions. I think a lot of people learned a lot more about you. I'm sure we'll do something like this again moving forward. All that remains is to get your prediction for tonight's game, Newcastle-Liverpool, George.
I think I said the other night, if the Newcastle plays Liverpool, so the Newcastle that started the second half against Nottingham Forest, we'll get a shellacking. If the Newcastle that when Oaken turns up, we could actually sneak a draw, even a cheeky 1-0 win.
Okay, I'm still convinced we're going to get beat tonight. I'm going 3-1, unfortunately. We will be back on the Fans Forum tomorrow. George will be with us 6 o'clock on nufc matters. So set your reminders. I'll stick it up there now. Enjoy the game tonight if you can.
Thanks everybody for your good wishes. I'm really grateful, and it was lovely to meet a lot of you at the food bank. And please come and have a word. I enjoy it very much. So, but thanks for watching. Thanks for watching the platform as well.
Take care, mate. The happiest of New Year's to you, mate. See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.